3 months after the first alien attacks, Admiral Jae-sung Kang stood on the bridge of his flagship, preparing for what everyone believed would be humanity's final battle. The alien fleets had swept through human space like wildfire, destroying everything in their path. Now they gathered at the edge of the solar system, ready to finish what they had started. Earth's remaining defenses hung in space around the homeworld like a thin shell against the storm. 43 ships, all that remained of humanity's once proud fleet, waited for an enemy force of over 2,000 vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity would be extinct within hours. "Admiral, our long-range sensors are picking up something unusual," reported Lieutenant Commander Yoonji Seo from her station. Her voice carried the exhaustion that everyone felt after months of hopeless fighting. Kang turned toward her console, expecting another report of approaching alien ships. Instead, he saw something that made no sense. A single contact was moving toward them from the direction of the Kepler 442 system, the same region where the UES Taeguk had vanished 16 years ago. "What kind of ship?" Kang asked, though part of him already knew the impossible answer. "Sir, it's broadcasting Terran identification codes," Seo replied, her fingers shaking as she worked her controls. "The signal matches the UES Taeguk, but that's impossible. The ship was lost 16 years ago." Kang felt his heart stop for a moment. The Taeguk had been his greatest failure, the mission that had haunted him every day since Captain Park and his crew had disappeared. "Confirm those codes." "Codes confirmed, sir." "It's definitely the Taeguk, but—" Seo paused, looking at her readings in confusion. "Admiral, the sensor readings don't make sense. The ship's energy signature is unlike anything in our database." As the mysterious vessel approached, the main viewing screen began to show its image. What they saw was both familiar and terrifying. The basic shape was that of the Taeguk, but the ship had been transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. Her hull gleamed with materials that seemed to bend light around them. Energy patterns flowed across her surface like living things, pulsing with colors that had no names. Around the ship, space itself seemed to twist and bend, as if reality was having trouble containing whatever the Taeguk had become. Where there should have been empty vacuum, strange geometries formed and dissolved, creating patterns that made human eyes water and human minds struggle to understand what they were seeing. "Admiral, we're receiving a communication request," announced Communications Officer Jae-ho Moon. His voice was barely steady as he worked his controls. "It's coming from the Taeguk." "Put it through," Kang ordered, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear what would come next. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Captain Hyun-woo Park appeared before them. But this was not the man who had disappeared 16 years ago. Park's eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. His skin had a strange quality, as if it was made of starlight held in human form. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies human ears shouldn't be able to hear. "Admiral Kang," Park said, and his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We received Dr. Shin's message. We have returned." Kang stared at the image of his old friend, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Captain Park? How is this possible? Where have you been?" "We have been learning," Park replied. "The beings we encountered showed us what we could become. They offered us a choice between transcendence and extinction. We chose transcendence, but we never forgot our origins." The screen flickered, and suddenly Da-eun Kim appeared beside Captain Park. But like Park, she had been transformed into something beyond human understanding. Her consciousness seemed to extend beyond the boundaries of her physical form, existing in dimensions that normal humans couldn't perceive. "Admiral," Da-eun said, her voice carrying the same impossible harmonics as Park's. "We exist between states now, in the spaces between dimensions. We have seen the structure of reality itself, learned to manipulate matter and energy in ways that your science cannot yet comprehend. The architects," Park continued, "are beings who have watched the galaxy for millions of years. They have seen species rise and fall, civilizations that reached for transcendence and others that chose destruction. They offered us the same choice they have offered to others throughout history." Tai-Jin Lee materialized on the screen, his form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. "We learned to interface directly with the fundamental forces of the universe. Matter, energy, time, space, all of these are tools we can now use. But Admiral, we remained human in our hearts." So young Choi appeared last, her consciousness spanning multiple dimensions as she spoke. "We heard Dr. Shin's quantum message across the barriers between realities. We learned of humanity's danger and we made another choice. We chose to return and defend our species. Admiral Kang felt tears forming in his eyes. The crew of the Taeguk had not died. They had become something beyond human understanding, but they had remembered their duty to protect humanity. Captain Park, Kang said, his voice thick with emotion. The Alien Alliance has 3,000 ships. They have technology far beyond ours. Even with your abilities, can you help us? Park's transformed features showed something that might have been a smile, though it existed in more dimensions than human vision could fully grasp. Admiral, you still think in terms of ships and weapons. The aliens who threaten humanity are advanced, but they are still bound by the physical laws of this single dimension. We are not. The screen changed to show the approaching alien fleet. 3,000 ships from 3 different empires, armed with weapons that could destroy planets and shields that had proven immune to human technology. They moved through space in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Watch, Captain Park said simply. Space around the alien fleet began to change. Reality itself seemed to become fluid, bending and twisting in ways that violated every law of physics that human science had discovered. The alien ships found themselves trapped in pockets of altered space-time, their advanced technology useless against forces they couldn't understand or predict. Fourth crystal ships, which could phase through normal matter, discovered that the matter around them was no longer normal. Their ability to manipulate energy meant nothing when energy itself obeyed new rules. Nilari biovessels, designed to adapt and evolve during battle, found themselves trying to adapt to conditions that changed faster than biological processes could respond. The Corvin assembly ships, with their hybrid intelligence and predictive capabilities, went silent as their artificial minds encountered mathematics that had no solutions and paradoxes that broke their logic circuits. How? Admiral Kang whispered, watching the alien fleet struggle against forces beyond their comprehension. We learned that reality is not fixed, Daun explained, her consciousness touching the Admiral's mind directly. The physical laws you know are only the first layer of existence. Beyond them are deeper truths, more fundamental forces that shape the universe itself. The aliens fear human potential because they sense that humanity is capable of transcendence, Taijin added. They were right to be afraid, but they acted too late. So Young's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. We will protect our species, Admiral, but understand that we can no longer be part of humanity in the way we once were. We exist in spaces beyond your dimension now. On the viewing screen, the alien fleet was beginning to break apart. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were now drifting helplessly, as the fundamental forces holding them together were rewritten by the transcended crew of the Taeguk. Will they surrender? Kang asked. Captain Park's transformed features grew cold, and for a moment the bridge temperature seemed to drop by several degrees. Admiral, they came to our home with the intention of exterminating every human man, woman, and child. They showed no mercy to our colonies, no compassion for our civilians. They sought to erase humanity from existence simply because they feared what we might become. The energy patterns around the Taeguk pulsed brighter, and space itself seemed to respond to the ship's presence. They will learn what we have become, and they will carry that knowledge back to every species in the galaxy. As Admiral Kang watched, the greatest threat humanity had ever faced was being dismantled by beings who had once been human, but had chosen to become something more. The crew of the lost ship had returned not just to save humanity, but to show the galaxy what humans were capable of when pushed beyond their limits. The war that was supposed to end with human extinction was about to become something very different. The species that had feared human potential was about to learn that their fears had been entirely justified. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution carried out by beings who had once been human, but had become something far more terrifying. The transformed crew of the Taeguk moved through the alien fleet like death itself, unmaking ships and technology with a precision that spoke of controlled fury. Admiral Jae-sung Kang watched from his flagship as Vorth crystal ships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in the traditional sense, but erased from reality, as if they had never been built. The crystalline beings inside screamed across multiple dimensions as their ability to phase through matter became a trap, locking them between states of existence that the transcended humans controlled absolutely. Captain Hyunwoo Park's voice echoed across every communication frequency in known space, speaking in languages that burned themselves into alien minds. You sought to extinguish humanity because you feared our potential. You destroyed our colonies, murdered our families, and tried to erase us from existence. Now you will learn what we have become in response to your cruelty. The Nalari Collective's bioships writhed in space as their living hulls were forced to evolve beyond their biological limits. Dayun Kim's consciousness touched each vessel, rewriting their genetic code in real time. The ships that had been designed to adapt and grow now grew beyond control, their biological systems consuming themselves as they tried to process evolutionary changes that happened in seconds instead of millennia. We could have been friends. Dayun's voice whispered directly into the minds of every Nalari commander. We could have shared knowledge and explored the galaxy together. Instead, you chose genocide. Now you will evolve whether you wish to or not. The Corvin assembly ships, with their hybrid artificial intelligence, faced the cruelest fate of all. Taejin Lee interfaced directly with their computer systems, not to destroy them but to force them to understand. Their artificial minds, designed to predict and analyze, were suddenly filled with the complete knowledge of what the transcended humans had become. The Corvin AI systems screamed in electronic agony as they tried to process mathematics that described realities beyond their programming. Their hybrid organic components writhed as they experienced sensations that their combined nature was never meant to feel. They understood in that terrible moment exactly how outmatched they were. You calculated the odds of defeating humanity. Taejin's voice resonated through their systems. But you calculated based on what we were, not what we were capable of becoming. Your mathematics were incomplete. So Young Choi stood at the center of the dimensional storm. Her consciousness expanded across multiple planes of existence. She broadcast humanity's fury across every frequency in the electromagnetic spectrum and beyond, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would hear what she had to say. This is humanity's answer to your alliance, she announced, her words traveling faster than light to reach every corner of known space. You formed a pact to destroy us because you feared our potential. You were right to fear us, but your solution was genocide. This is the consequence of that choice. The 3 alien fleets that had swept through human space with such devastating efficiency were being systematically dismantled by forces they couldn't comprehend. Ships that had seemed invincible hours before now drifted as empty hulks, their crews either dead or transformed into something their species had never been meant to become. Admiral Kang watched the destruction with mixed emotions. Part of him felt satisfaction at seeing humanity's enemies defeated so completely, but another part of him was terrified by the beings his old friends had become. The crew of the Taeguk had retained their human memories and emotions, but they were no longer bound by human limitations or human morality. Captain Park, Kang said into his communication system, they're trying to surrender. Several alien commanders are broadcasting surrender signals. The response came not just through the communication system, but directly into Kang's mind, a sensation that was both familiar and alien. Admiral, do you remember what they did to New Seoul? To the families on Miranda Colony? To the children on Haven Station? Images flashed through Kang's consciousness, memories taken from the quantum messages that Dr. Youngmin Shin had broadcast before his death. Alien weapons turning human cities to ash, families separated as colonies burned, children crying for parents who would never come home. They showed no mercy when they had the advantage, Captain Park continued. They offered no quarter to our civilians, no chance for surrender to our colonies. They came to exterminate us, Admiral. Now they will learn what extermination truly means. But the transcended humans did not simply destroy the alien fleets. Instead, they did something far more terrifying. They let most of the alien ships survive, but they changed them, modified them, left them functional but marked with technology that no species in the galaxy would be able to understand or remove. Every surviving Vorth ship found its crystal matrix altered with patterns that would broadcast humanity's message across their empire for generations. The crystals themselves had become living monuments to human fury, growing and changing in ways that would spread the story of this battle to every Vorth world. The Nalari bioships that survived were genetically modified to carry new biological markers, traits that would spread through their species and serve as permanent reminders of what happened when humanity was threatened. Their children and their children's children would carry the genetic memory of this defeat. The Corvin assembly ships were reprogrammed, with new directives buried so deep in their code that no amount of analysis could remove them. Their artificial intelligences would spend eternity processing the mathematical proofs of their defeat, unable to forget or ignore the equations that described human transcendence. "You came to destroy us," So Young's voice echoed across the surviving alien ships. "Instead, you have forged us into something that will protect humanity for all time. Return to your empires. Tell them what you have seen. Make sure they understand that any threat to humanity will be met with consequences beyond their comprehension." The broken alien fleets began to retreat, limping home to carry news of their defeat to the three empires that had sent them. But they would not return unchanged. They carried with them technology and modifications that would serve as permanent warnings to any species that might consider threatening humanity in the future. Admiral Kang felt a presence near his ship and looked up to see the Teguk approaching. The transformed vessel hung in space nearby, its impossible geometry still painful to look at directly. Captain Park's image appeared on the viewing screen one final time. "Admiral, we have done what we came to do. Humanity is safe, but our task is not complete. There are other forces in the galaxy, older and more dangerous than these three empires. We will watch for them from the spaces between dimensions." "Will we see you again?" Kang asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Da-Un Kim appeared beside Park on the screen. "We exist between states now, Admiral. We can no longer be part of humanity in the way we once were. But we will always be watching. Any threat to our species will find us waiting for them." "Thank you," Kang said simply, knowing that no words could express what the crew of the Teguk had sacrificed to save their species. "Take care of our people, Admiral," Captain Park replied. "Make sure they know that somewhere in the darkness between stars their guardians are watching." The Teguk began to fade from normal space, phasing into dimensions that human science couldn't detect. As it disappeared, the patterns of twisted reality around it gradually returned to normal, leaving no trace that the ship had ever been there except for the memories of those who had witnessed its return. Admiral Kang stood on his bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest threat. The war was over, but it had ended in a way that no one could have predicted. Humanity had been saved not by superior technology or tactical brilliance, but by members of their own species who had chosen to become something beyond human understanding. In the months that followed, the news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy. The three great empires that had once threatened human extinction now lived in terror of retribution from beings they couldn't comprehend. Other species that had considered humanity a threat to galactic stability reconsidered their positions. Commander Dong-Hyun Yoon, promoted to admiral after the victory, established new protocols for deep space exploration. The search for signs of the Teguk and her transcended crew became humanity's highest priority. Not to bring them home, but to ensure that the galaxy knew humanity had protectors watching from beyond normal space. General Mi-young Park, Captain Park's sister, became the architect of humanity's new galactic policy. The species that had once sought peaceful expansion now carried themselves with the confidence of beings protected by guardians who existed beyond the reach of conventional warfare. And somewhere, in the spaces between dimensions, the crew of the Teguk continued their eternal watch. They had chosen transcendence to save their species, becoming something more than human but never forgetting what it meant to be human. They were humanity's guardians now, protectors who would ensure that no threat could ever again come so close to extinguishing the species they had died to save. The attack came at dawn on 17 human colonies across the Outer Rim. Admiral Jae-sung Kang was in his command center when the first distress signals arrived, each one more desperate than the last. The holographic display in front of him lit up with red warning symbols as colony after colony went dark. "New Busan is under attack," reported Commander Jin-A Park, Admiral Kang's communications officer. "They're reporting massive energy weapons and ships that can phase through their defenses." "Kepler Colony 7 just went silent," added Lieutenant Woo Jin Kim from the sensor station. "Last message said something about living ships growing out of the ground." Admiral Kang watched the tactical display with growing horror. Each red symbol represented thousands of human lives, families, and communities that had spent years building new homes among the stars. Now those homes were burning, and there was nothing he could do to help them. The tripartite alliance had struck with perfect coordination. Fourth crystal ships appeared out of nowhere, phasing through space itself to bypass early warning systems. Their weapons turned matter into energy, dissolving human defenses like they were made of paper. The Nilari Collective sent biovessels that looked like living creatures, growing new weapons and armor as they fought. Most terrifying of all were the Corvin assembly ships, which seemed to predict every human tactical move before it was made. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Frontier Fleet," Commander Park announced. "Admiral Sujin An is requesting immediate reinforcements." Admiral An commanded the Outer Defense Fleet, 12 ships that were supposed to protect the frontier colonies. But 12 ships, no matter how well armed, could not stand against the combined might of 3 alien empires. "Tell Admiral An to fall back to the secondary defense line," Kang ordered. "We need to buy time to organize our response." But even as he gave the order, Kang knew it was hopeless. The Alien Alliance had studied human tactics for decades. They knew exactly how human fleets would respond, exactly what defensive positions they would take. Every strategy that humanity had developed over centuries of warfare was useless against an enemy that had watched them practice. On the colony world of New Seoul, Dr. Young Min Shin was working frantically in his research laboratory as alien ships filled the sky above. He was a quantum communications specialist, one of the few humans who understood the theoretical science behind faster-than-light messaging. His hands shook as he tried to complete the device he had been building in secret for the past 3 years. "Doctor, we need to evacuate now," shouted his assistant, Haijin Lee, as explosions rocked the building around them. "The planetary defense grid has fallen. They're targeting all the research facilities." "Just give me 5 more minutes," Dr. Shin replied, his fingers working quickly to connect the final components of his quantum transmitter. This could be humanity's only chance to send a message beyond the range of their jamming. Outside, the sky burned with alien fire. Vorth energy weapons carved through the atmosphere like knives, while Nilari bioships spread across the ground like living cancer, consuming everything they touched. The human colonists ran through the streets trying to reach the underground shelters, but many didn't make it. Dr. Shin's device finally came online just as a Corvin machine ship landed near his laboratory. He could hear the sound of metal feet approaching, but he didn't stop working. His quantum transmitter was humanity's last hope of getting a message out to anyone who might be listening. "This is New Seoul Colony," he spoke into the device, his voice steady despite the terror around him. "We are under attack by 3 alien species. Humanity is facing extinction. Our weapons are useless, our defenses have failed. If anyone receives this message, please remember us. Remember that we tried to be more than we were." The laboratory door exploded inward as Corvin soldiers entered, their bodies a strange mixture of metal and flesh. But Dr. Shin had already activated the transmitter, sending his message across multiple quantum frequencies, including some that existed only in theory. The signal raced out into space, traveling faster than light, reaching into dimensions that normal physics said shouldn't exist. Back at Defense Command on Earth, Admiral Kang received reports from across human space. Colony after colony was falling to the alien assault. The human fleet was being systematically destroyed by enemies who seemed to know their every move before they made it. "Admiral, Earth Defense Command is reporting massive fleet movements approaching our solar system," Commander Park announced. "Estimated arrival time is 72 hours. Admiral Kang felt his heart sink. If the aliens were already moving on Earth, then they had won. Humanity's outer defenses had lasted less than a day against the combined alien assault. General Mi-young Park entered the command center, her face pale with shock. As one of humanity's most powerful political leaders, she had access to classified information from across human space. "Admiral, I just received word from the President. 18 colonies have been completely destroyed. 7 more are under siege. Our casualty estimates are approaching 3 million dead." The number hit Admiral Kang like a physical blow. 3 million humans dead in a single day, killed by aliens who had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. All those people who had dreamed of living among the stars, who had worked and sacrificed to build new worlds, wiped out because other species feared human potential. "What about our allies?" asked Commander Park. "Have any of the neutral species offered to help?" General Park shook her head. "They're all staying out of it. The few diplomatic contacts we've managed to maintain are telling us that the galaxy considers this a necessary correction to prevent human expansion from threatening galactic stability. Admiral Kang walked to the viewing window that looked out over Earth's blue oceans and green continents. Below him, billions of humans went about their lives, most of them unaware that their species was about to be exterminated by creatures they had never met. "Sir, we're receiving multiple distress calls from the inner colonies," Lieutenant Kim reported. "The enemy is advancing faster than we predicted. They're not stopping to occupy territory, they're just destroying everything and moving on." "It's not conquest," Admiral Kang realized. "It's extermination. They don't want our worlds or our resources. They want us gone." The truth was worse than any military defeat. Humanity wasn't facing an enemy that wanted to conquer them or steal their territory. They were facing species that had decided humans were fundamentally too dangerous to exist. Every human colony, every ship, every man, woman, and child was marked for death simply because other species feared what humanity might become. Admiral Sujin An's voice crackled over the communication system from the outer defense perimeter. "Defense Command, this is Admiral An. We're down to 4 ships and falling back toward Mars. The enemy technology is beyond anything we've encountered. Their weapons ignore our shields. Their ships repair themselves faster than we can damage them. And their tactics adapt in real time to everything we try." "Understood, Admiral An," Kang replied. "Fall back to the Mars defense grid and prepare for a final stand." But everyone in the command center knew that the Mars defense grid would fall just as quickly as everything else. Humanity's technology, developed over centuries of war and exploration, was simply not advanced enough to fight enemies who had been watching and planning for decades. As the hours passed, more colonies fell silent. The alien fleets moved through human space like a plague, leaving nothing but empty worlds and debris fields behind them. Human refugees fled toward the inner systems, carrying stories of weapons that could unmake matter and ships that seemed alive. On New Busan, the last human research facility was about to fall when Dr. Young Min Shin made his final broadcast. The aliens had jammed most communication frequencies, but his quantum transmitter still worked, sending messages into the theoretical spaces between dimensions. "This is humanity's last stand," he spoke into the device as alien weapons destroyed the building around him. "We tried to explore the galaxy in peace. We sought knowledge and friendship among the stars. Instead, we found species that fear us so much they would rather commit genocide than risk our continued existence." He paused as an explosion shook the facility. "If anyone receives this message, remember us. Remember that we reached for the stars with hope in our hearts. Remember that we dreamed of a better future among the cosmos." The transmission cut off as the facility was destroyed, but Dr. Shin's message continued traveling through space and time, carried by quantum frequencies that most species didn't even know existed. His words raced across the galaxy at impossible speeds, reaching into dimensions that existed beyond normal reality. Admiral Kang stood in his command center, watching human civilization burn. In less than 24 hours, the tripartite alliance had shattered humanity's dreams of expansion and exploration. The species that had reached for the stars was about to be extinguished by creatures who saw human potential as an existential threat. "Admiral," Commander Park said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting the main alien fleet approaching the solar system. Estimated strength is over 2,000 ships." Kang nodded, his face grim but determined. 15 years had passed since the UES Taeguk disappeared into the void. Commander Dong-Hyun Yoon sat in his office at Terra Base, staring at the memorial wall that displayed the names of every crew member who had been lost with the ship. Captain Hyunwoo Park's name sat at the top of the list, and below it were 2,846 others who would never come home. Yoon had been Park's student once, learning everything he could about deep space exploration from the man he considered his mentor. Now he commanded the Terran Survey Corps, the organization responsible for mapping the unknown regions of space and keeping other ships from suffering the same fate as the Taeguk. The loss of the great ship had changed everything. Humanity's expansion into space had slowed to a crawl as politicians and military leaders argued about safety protocols. The Park protocols, named after the lost captain, now required all exploration vessels to check in every 6 hours and carry backup beacon systems that would automatically send distress signals if anything went wrong. Yoon's door chimed, and Lieutenant Han Sol-Kwan entered the office. The young officer looked tired and worried, which was unusual for him. Kwan was normally calm and confident, the kind of person who could handle any crisis without breaking a sweat. He had spent the last 3 years working as a deep-cover operative in alien space, gathering intelligence on the species that lived beyond human territory. "Commander, we need to talk," Quan said, closing the door behind him. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room until we decide what to do with the information." Yoon gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit down and tell me what's got you so worried." Quan sat down but remained tense, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "Sir, I've been monitoring communications between 3 major alien empires. The Fourth Hegemony, the Nalari Collective, and the Corvan Assembly have been holding secret meetings for the past 2 years. Yoon raised an eyebrow. These 3 species were known to human intelligence, but they had never shown interest in working together before. The Vorth were crystalline beings who could phase through solid matter and manipulate energy in ways that human science couldn't explain. The Nalari lived in gas giant atmospheres and controlled biological technology that could grow ships and weapons from living tissue. The Corvan Assembly was a hybrid civilization of organic beings and artificial intelligence that had merged into something neither fully machine nor fully alive. "What kind of meetings?" Yoon asked. "They're forming an alliance, sir, something they're calling the Tripartite Pact, and the target of that alliance is us." Yoon felt ice form in his stomach. "Explain." Quan pulled out a small device and activated a holographic display. Images of alien ships and star charts filled the air between them. They've been studying human expansion for decades. Every colony we've established, every ship design we've built, every military strategy we've developed. They know everything about us. The display showed human space from an alien perspective, with colonies marked in red and fleet positions highlighted with tactical symbols. It was like looking at a target painted on humanity's back. "They see us as a threat," Quan continued. "Humans expand faster than any species they've encountered. Our technology improves at a rate that scares them. In less than 300 years, we went from flying wooden aircraft to traveling between stars. They think if they don't stop us now, we'll eventually become too powerful to contain." Yoon studied the intelligence data, his military mind automatically analyzing the threat. The 3 alien empires controlled hundreds of star systems between them. Their combined fleets outnumbered human forces by at least 10 to 1, and their technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity could field. "How long do we have?" Yoon asked. "Based on their communications, they're planning to strike within the next year. They want to hit our outer colonies first, then work their way toward Earth. The goal isn't conquest, it's elimination." Yoon stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the base. Outside, he could see ships coming and going, carrying supplies and personnel to the frontier colonies that were now under threat. Thousands of people went about their daily lives, unaware that alien empires were planning their destruction. "Who else knows about this?" Yoon asked. "Just me and now you. I brought the information straight here as soon as I confirmed it." Yoon turned back to face the lieutenant. "We need to alert the Defense Council immediately. Admiral Jae-sung Kang needs to see this data." Admiral Kang was now in his 70s, but he still commanded the Terran Defense Fleet with the same skill that had made him famous during the colony wars 30 years earlier. He had been the one who organized the massive search for the Taeguk, and the failure to find any trace of the ship still haunted him. 3 hours later, Yoon and Quan sat in the secure briefing room at Defense Command, presenting their intelligence to Admiral Kang and the senior staff. The room was filled with the top military minds in human space, but even they looked shocked by what they were hearing. Admiral Kang was a tall man, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had seen humanity through several wars and crises, but nothing like this. "Lieutenant Quan, how confident are you in this intelligence?" "Completely confident, sir. I recorded the meetings myself and had the translations verified by 3 independent sources. The alien alliance is real and they're planning to attack us." General Mi-young Park, Captain Park's sister, leaned forward from her seat at the table. She had entered politics after her brother's disappearance, becoming one of the most powerful voices in human government. "What are our options for defense?" Admiral Kang looked grim. "Honestly, very limited. If these 3 empires combine their forces, we're looking at a fight we can't win with conventional tactics. Our only advantages are our speed and adaptability, but that won't be enough against superior numbers and technology." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the reality of their situation. Humanity had always known that they weren't alone in the galaxy. but they had hoped to have more time to develop their technology and expand their territory before facing a major threat. "There is one other thing," Quan said quietly. In their communications, the alien leaders mentioned something called the Park Incident. They seemed to think that whatever happened to the Taeguk was connected to some kind of advanced technology or alien contact. Admiral Kang's face went pale. "What exactly did they say?" "They're afraid of it, sir. Whatever they think happened out there, it's part of the reason they want to attack us now. They mentioned something about preventing another transcendence event and stopping the pattern before it completes." Yoon felt confused. "What could that mean?" "I don't know," Quan admitted. "But they seem to believe that humans are capable of something that threatens them on a fundamental level. Something beyond just military conquest." General Park stood up and walked to the holographic display showing human space. "We need to start preparing our defenses immediately. Every colony needs to be warned. Every ship needs to be armed, and every citizen needs to be ready for war." Admiral Kang nodded. "I'll speak with the president tomorrow. We'll need to mobilize everything we have." He paused and looked around the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to face the greatest threat in human history. These aliens have been planning our destruction for years while we've been exploring and expanding peacefully." "What about evacuation plans?" asked Colonel Sung-Ho Bae, who commanded the Colonial Defense Forces. "We'll prepare them, but where would we go?" Admiral Kang replied. "Human space is our home. If we run, where do we stop running? No, we make our stand here and show these aliens what humans are capable of when they're fighting for survival." As the meeting broke up, Yoon remained behind with Admiral Kang. The old officer looked tired and worried, the weight of defending humanity's future heavy on his shoulders. "Commander, I want you to double the search protocols in the outer systems," Kang said. "If there's any chance that the Taeguk is still out there, we need to find her. Something tells me we're going to need every advantage we can get." Yoon nodded and left the briefing room, his mind racing with plans and preparations. As he walked through the corridors of Defense Command, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face a test that would determine whether they survived as a species. Outside, the stars looked the same as always, but now Yoon knew that somewhere among them, alien fleets were preparing to bring death and destruction to every human world. The peace that humanity had enjoyed was about to end, and the war that was coming would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. Captain Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of the UES Taeguk, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, moving deeper into space than any human vessel had gone before. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, checking readings and running tests on the strange signals they had been sent to investigate. The Taeguk was humanity's finest achievement. Built in the orbital shipyards above Earth, she was over 2 kilometers long and housed 2,047 people. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, doctors, and explorers from every corner of human space called her home. Captain Park felt proud every time he walked through her corridors and saw his people working together. "Captain, we're getting stronger readings from the nebula," said Chief Science Officer Daeun Kim. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent her whole life studying the mysteries of space. Her fingers moved quickly over her control panel, bringing up displays filled with numbers and graphs that made little sense to anyone but her. Park walked over to her station and looked at the screen. The readings showed energy patterns unlike anything they had seen before. The signals seemed to pulse and change, almost like they were alive. "How far are we from the source?" he asked. 2 days at current speed," Daeun replied. "But Captain, these readings are getting stranger by the hour. The energy is not following any known patterns. It's like the nebula itself is generating something we don't understand." From across the bridge, Chief Engineer Tae-Jin Lee called out, "Captain, I'm seeing some odd effects on our systems too. Nothing dangerous yet, but our sensors are picking up interference from whatever is out there." Tae-Jin was a big man with gentle hands who could fix anything that broke on the ship. He had been working on starships since he was 16 years old, and Park had never seen him worried about technical problems. If Tae-Jin was concerned, then there was something serious happening. Park pressed a button on his command chair. "All senior staff to the conference room in 1 hour." His voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "We need to discuss our mission parameters." An hour later, Park sat at the head of a long table surrounded by his most trusted officers. Daeun Kim sat to his right, her tablet covered with data from the mysterious signals. Tae-Jin Lee sat across from her, tapping his fingers on the table as he often did when thinking about complex problems. Communications specialist Oh Young Choi sat near the end of the table, her equipment still monitoring the strange transmissions even during the meeting. So Young was the youngest senior officer on the ship, but she had a gift for understanding signals and communications that amazed everyone who worked with her. She could find patterns in noise that others missed and had saved the ship from several dangerous situations during their journey. "What do we know for certain?" Park asked, looking around the table. Da-Yoon spoke first. "The energy readings are coming from the center of the nebula. They're not natural. Someone or something is generating them. The patterns suggest intelligence, but not any kind we recognize." Tae-Jin nodded. "Our systems are stable, but I'm seeing minor fluctuations in our power grid. Nothing that will hurt the ship, but it's like something is testing our defenses, trying to understand how our technology works." So Young looked up from her equipment. "Captain, I've been analyzing the signal structure. There are layers to it, like multiple conversations happening at the same time. Some parts almost sound like language, but not from any species we know about." Park leaned back in his chair. The Taeguk had been sent to investigate these signals after long-range sensors had detected them 6 months ago. Earth scientists were excited about the possibility of finding new life, new civilizations to trade and learn from. But Park was a military man first, and something about this mission felt different. "Options?" he asked his team. "We could send probes ahead," suggested Tae-Jin. "Get more information before we commit the ship and crew." Daeun shook her head. "Our probes won't be sensitive enough to gather the data we need. We have to get closer ourselves. The signals are definitely trying to communicate," So Young added. "If we don't respond, we might miss the chance to make first contact with a new species." Park considered their words. The Taeguk carried the hopes of all humanity. They were explorers, scientists, and diplomats rolled into one. Their mission was to push the boundaries of human knowledge and bring back discoveries that would benefit everyone back home. "We continue as planned," Park decided. "But we go in ready for anything. Tae-Jin, I want all systems checked and double-checked. Tae-Yoon, keep monitoring those signals and try to find patterns we can understand. So Young, prepare our first contact protocols." Over the next 2 days, the ship moved deeper into the nebula. The gas clouds around them glowed with strange colors that hurt to look at directly. Their instruments showed readings that should have been impossible, as if the laws of physics worked differently in this part of space. Da-Yoon spent most of her time in the science labs, running tests and comparing data. She barely slept, driven by the excitement of discovering something completely new. Her reports to the captain grew more excited each hour as she uncovered layers of complexity in the signals that suggested intelligence far beyond human. Understanding Tae-Jin worked around the clock, keeping the ship running as the strange energies affected more and more of their systems. He had teams of engineers checking every circuit and backup system, making sure they could get home if something went wrong. Despite his concerns, he couldn't help but admire the technology that was creating these effects. Whatever was generating the signals had mastery over forces that humanity was only beginning to understand. So Young made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding the communication patterns. She discovered that the signals were indeed a form of language, but one that used concepts and ideas that didn't translate directly into human thought. It was like trying to have a conversation with someone who experienced reality in completely different ways. On the final day of their approach, Captain Park stood on the bridge watching the nebula change around them. The gas clouds had taken on geometric patterns that definitely weren't natural. Shapes that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions moved through the space around their ship. "Captain," Da-Yoon called out, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "The source is directly ahead. It's not what we expected." Park looked at the main screen and felt his breath catch in his throat. Ahead of them, floating in the center of the nebula, was a structure that hurt to look at directly. It seemed to be made of solid energy, twisting and flowing in patterns that made his eyes water. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "So Young, are you getting anything from them?" Park asked. "Yes, Captain," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. "They're sending us something. It's not words exactly, but I think it's an invitation." Park looked around his bridge at the crew he trusted with his life. They had come so far from home, pushed the boundaries of human exploration further than ever before. Now they faced something that could change everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. "Take us in." he ordered. Let's see what they want to show us. As the Teguk moved toward the impossible structure, none of them knew that this decision would change not just their lives, but the future of the entire human race. The signals from the nebula had been more than just communication. They had been a test. And humanity had just passed the first part of an examination that would determine their survival in a universe far more dangerous than they had ever imagined.